The 2022 version of the United Nations World Population Prospects was released during the second week of July. It said that the world population will breach the 8 billion mark on November 15 this year, and India will overtake China next year to become the world's most populous nation with over 1.4 billion people. And in 2050, the country is projected to have a population of 1.66 billion, way ahead of China's 1.31 billion. This might be so not only because the rate of population growth in India is much higher than in China, but because the neighboring country is also expected to experience an absolute decline in its population as early as next year. This increasing population will put additional pressure on resources, which are already stretched. Changes in a country's population size are always a result of the demographic transitions. One such phase is where the growth of the share of the working age population, aged between 15 and 64 years, is temporarily higher than the combined shares at younger and older ages, presenting a perfect opportunity for accelerated economic growth and social development, known as the demographic dividend. In 2020, there were about 900 million Indians, which amounts to 67% of total population in the working age group, as compared to China's 64.9%. The UN population report mentions that the working age group will continue to increase for some time in Asia.
The news that India will be the most populous country in 2023 prima facie appears to be good because it really says that we're going to have a larger labor force compared to the Western economies, which seem to be having a larger aging force, labor force. But I think that for India going ahead, this is going to be a major problem because as we have the largest population, it is essential that we'll have to focus our energies, both physical as well as financial, on making sure that the population is well educated, have good health facilities, other social services are provided, so that we really have a labor force which is able to contribute to the GDP. And today we have seen that while employment has always been a challenge for us, as the population grows, as we have more people in the younger age groups, we need to make sure that they get viable jobs. It's not just a case of having jobs like home delivery of food and other kind of services. It'll have to be things in the higher, where I would say, in the knowledge economy. And that's where I think the major challenge for the government lies. No, in fact, I think the onus may be falling more on states rather than the center, because a lot of these subjects like health and education fall within the purview of states. So state governments, along with the center, to the extent that you have certain programs which are being co-financed by the center or being driven by the center, there will have to be a lot of money spent in these two areas.
India barely invests 1.29% of its GDP annually on health, which is less than Bangladesh and Nepal. In contrast, China spends 6.7% of its GDP on health. Meanwhile, India's education spending at around 3 to 3.5% of GDP is way below the global average of 4.2%, or say Brazil's 6.3% of GDP. Coming to job creation, if India does not create enough jobs and its workers are not adequately prepared for those jobs, then the demographic dividend may turn into a liability. Currently, the labor force participation rate, which is the proportion of the working class willing to work, is lower in India at 46% than China at 68%, according to a World Bank database. This is mainly because of the low female labor force participation rate in India, which is around 19%, compared with China's 62%. In August of 2020, a McKinsey Global Institute report had said that India needed to generate 90 million non-farm jobs between 2023 and 2030 in order to absorb new workers and an additional 30 million workers who could shift from farm work to non-farm sectors. To absorb this influx, India would need close to 12 million additional gainful non-farm jobs every year starting in financial year 2023. This would be triple of the 4 million non-farm jobs created annually between 2012 and 2018, the report noted. To create jobs at such a massive scale, India's GDP will need to grow by 8 to 8.5% annually over the next decade, and the productivity growth needs to be maintained at 6.5 to 7%. Moving on, Should we be alarmed by the rate of population growth in general? Not so much. India's total fertility rate, which is the average number of children that could be born to a woman in her lifetime, has declined from 2.2 in 2015-16 to 2 in 2019-21. The Institute of Health Metrics and Evaluation projects the country's total fertility rate at 1.29 births per woman by the end of the century. This is way below the UN's replacement level fertility rate at 2.1 children per woman. The latest NFHS survey also shows over 2/3 of Indian states have below replacement level fertility rates. Below replacement fertility rates eventually result in negative population growth. While India is expected to have a demographic dividend, reaping its potential benefits requires significant investments in education and health and work towards the availability of gainful employment. This is a challenge not only for the government but also for the private sector.
If you like this video, share it and subscribe to Business Standard. For more news, views and insights, log on to www.business-standard.com. Do also follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram and LinkedIn.
क्या हाल?
मत पूछ यार, फिर से स्टॉक्स में फंस गया।
तो स्टॉक्स के साथ बॉन्ड्स, इंश्योरेंस, गोल्ड में बैलेंस कर।
इसमें बहुत तामझाम है।
तुझे 5 पैसा नहीं पता?
अब तो सबको पता है। 5 पैसा है ऑल इन वन अकाउंट। डाउनलोड 5 पैसा नाउ।
अब तो सबको पता है। Investing made easy and rewarding with 5 Paisa. Investments in securities market are subject to market risks. Read all the related documents carefully before investing.